Hello everyone and welcome to the second video of my DDLC modding beginners tutorial. Today we are actually getting into the code and we are going to run our mod for the first time. Just before we get into that, I want to talk to you about an important concept in programming called indentation. In very simple words, indentation is the number of empty spaces to the left of a line of code. So, for example, if I have some code in this line, whatever it may be, here I have 0 spaces of indentation because it's all the way to the left. I have 1 space, 2 spaces, 3 spaces, 4 spaces, etc, etc. This is important because in Python and in NumPy, indentation matters. Indentation changes how your code runs. So for example, if I have 2 lines of code like this is going to run differently from this. I'm going to explain this better later because it's easier to understand with examples, but for now I just want you to keep 2 things in mind. First, you need to pay attention to how your code is lined up, otherwise you're going to get errors. And second, you are probably going to see a pattern looking like this, where you're going to have some code followed by a colon and then some more code that is indented, usually 4 spaces. This essentially means that code 2 is inside code 1, or you can think of it as code 2 being dependent on code 1. Again, this is going to make more sense later, but for now I just want you to verify that in your VS Code, here on the bottom right where it says select indentation, it says spaces 4. If it doesn't, you can click on it, select indent using spaces and select 4. What this is going to do is, if you're in a line of code somewhere and you press the tab key on your keyboard, the key above your caps lock, it's going to introduce 4 spaces instead of using the actual tab character. This is helpful because Python doesn't deal well with tabs, so if you want to use tab, you can use it and it's going to automatically put spaces in. Okay, with that out of the way, let's open our modding folder and let's open NumPy. You're going to see the name of your mod here at the top and you want to click base. This is going to open the base folder of your project, and here outside of the files but inside the folder you want to right click and go to open with code. What this is going to do is open that entire folder inside Visual Studio Code, so you don't have to leave it to open new files. You can see that all the folders and all the files are here on the left, and this works like a normal folder. You can open the subfolders, you can open new files, and you can open multiple files, and they stay open here at the top as if they were browser tabs. It works in the same way. If for some reason you don't see these files here, this at the top is the button to close and open this Explorer. For our actual code, we are going to put it inside the game folder. This is where you put all of the code for pretty much any NumPy game. There is another interesting folder here called original script files, and inside here you can find the code for the original DDLC. So if you ever need to know how the original game did something, you can check it out here and see how it's done. But for now, let's go into the game folder and let's open Options.rpy. As the name of the file implies, in here we can change a few options of our mod. If this is your first time looking at code, this in green is what we call a string. A string is just a bunch of characters enclosed in double quotes. You can see there's a double quote at the beginning and a double quote at the end. This just tells the computer or tells the program that this is just normal readable text and it isn't actual code to execute, just text for humans to read. And in this particular case, this string is the name of our mod, so we're just going to change this to the name of our mod. The config.version is the version of your mod. This is going to be something like, for example, 0.1 for the demo and maybe 1.0 for your full release. You can change this to whatever you want. There aren't really any rules. and the build.name is the name of the zip that RenPy is going to create when it compiles your mod. And for this one, there are a few rules because you can't really have spaces and special characters in this name. So for example, if your mod name is, let's say, very good tutorial, you should keep that same name, but just remove these spaces. And if you use a language that has special characters like this, for example, remove them and use just the standard English letters. And now that we modified this file, you'll notice that Visual Studio Code added a little white circle next to the name of the file. When that circle is there, it means that we haven't saved the changes made to this file. And if you haven't saved it, it's not going to show up in the game. So when it's there, you should save your file with Ctrl S. The circle disappears, and that means that we have saved. Okay, with that little bit of housekeeping done, let's actually add some dialogue to our game. Technically speaking, we could put this dialogue anywhere because RenPy doesn't actually differentiate between files, but it's good to keep things in separate files just to be organized so it's easier to find things. So let's go here to the game folder and let's right click it and let's create a new file. And I'm going to call this story.rpy. You can call this file anything you want, but it does have to end in .rpy. And at the top here, I'm going to put label story : Now you might be asking, what is a label? You can think of a label as a piece of your story. It can be your entire story, it can be just a part of a story, but a label is going to hold some dialogue, images, music, etc., etc., that is going to compose a part of your story. Looking at this, you might recognize the pattern I told you about when we were talking about indentation. We have a little bit of code followed by a colon. That means that the code that comes below this and is indented by 4 spaces is going to be inside our label, and this is where we're going to add our dialogue to be inside our story label. Also, you're going to notice that if I just leave my cursor where it is right now and I click enter, VSC automatically puts my cursor indented 4 spaces, so it's automatically in the right place so we can start typing. And to actually add some dialogue, we just write a string. So we're going to open double quotes and I'm just going to type something like, hello, I am the narrator. And this is how you make the narrator talk. You just put a string there. To make a character talk, you do the same thing, but you add a little code before that to say which character is talking. So for example, for MC, the character is MC. Hello, I am the MC. And for each of the girls, their code is the first letter of their name in lowercase. So for example, for Sayori, it's an S. For Monica, it's an M. For Natsuki, it's an N, and for Yuri, it's an Y. If you want one of your characters to use the name that you input at the beginning of the game when you click New Game, you do it like this. For example, I'm going to put MC saying hello, my name is, and you're going to open square brackets and put player inside it. And when you play the game, this here is going to be substituted by the name that the player inputs. When you're finished writing your label, let's say your story is finished or this section of your story is finished, you write return. Just the word return. This tells RenPy, okay, this is the end of this label, we can end this. Don't forget to add this return, because even though it won't give you an actual error, it can cause some weird problems and it can be hard to figure out what's actually wrong. Just a minute ago, I told you that a label can contain just part of your story, which of course means that you can have more than one label. You can, for example, in the same file, I'm going to create a label called Story Monica, and this label will have some part of my story that's specific to Monica, and I will return at the end, and I will have two separate parts of my story that I can use at different times. If you have a big story, I also recommend separating it into multiple files. So I'm gonna go to game and I'm going to create a file called, for example, story day 2 and a label. I'm going to just call it day 2. And inside this label, again, I would have some dialogue, etc. and a return. And this will be the code for the second day of my mod. This is how I do it. I put all of the labels for the same day of my mod in separate files, so it's all organized like that. Again, you can organize it any way you want, as long as it makes sense to you, but these are essentially your two options. I'm actually going to just add some dialogue here, just so you can see it working later. This is the second day, and I'm going to save this. I'm going to save this too. In fact, I'm going to just delete this one here and I'm going to save it. Of course, in your mod, I also recommend that you keep consistent naming schemes. Again, just so everything is organized. So for example, I'm going to rename this to day1.rpy and this to day2.rpy. And I'm going to rename this label to day1 and this one stays as day2. That way, everything is very clear and you know exactly what each label contains. Okay, so we have our labels now, but we're not actually doing anything with them. They're created, but they are not used. And to fix that, we are gonna go to script.rpy. This file has a very special label called label start. This label is special because when you're in the main menu and you click new game, this is the label that the game looks for. So this is where the game starts. That said, we're gonna scroll down a bit until we find these two lines here. Wise, the creator of the template, very generously left us a note saying, remove this line when you have made a story script. We already did that, so we're going to delete these two lines. And what we're going to do here is to call day 1. What this is going to do is the code is going to reach this point and it's simply going to play out our day 1 label, everything that's inside it. If we have more than one label, we can put them in the order that we want them to happen. So in this case, I'm going to put call day 2 below it. So call day 1, it's going to run our label day 1. Call day 2, it's going to run our label day 2. I'm going to save my file and we can go back to RenPy and we can launch our project. It's going to show the usual warnings because it's the first time we open the game. This only shows up because I'm recording, it shouldn't show up for you. And there we go, we're in the game. You can see that the name and the version that we set in Options.rpy show up here. And if we click new game, it's going to ask for our name like usual. And if I go back to our script, you can see that the lines of dialogue that we wrote are showing up here. Hello, I am the narrator. My name, hello, I am the MC. And Sayori is talking with question marks. If you remember from the original DDLC, the first time you meet each girl, their names don't show up, and that's what's happening here. To fix this, we can go to script.rpy and scroll up a little bit, and you'll find these 4 lines here. Here, you can change their name back. S name is of course Sayori, M name is of course Monica, N name Natsuki, and the Y name is Yuri. We can save again, don't forget to save, and if we launch our project now, and we click new game, hello, I am the narrator, hello, I am the MC, and now Sayori is talking, Monica is talking, Natsuki, Yuri, and finally we can see that the square brackets with player shows up as the player name. And now this is the end of the label, so we skipped to the second label and it's showing the second day label. Now this is the end of all our labels, so the game is just going to end. So when it comes to dialogue, that's pretty much all there is. Of course, you must have noticed that there were no background images, the music was just the main menu music, and there were no sprites. But that is something for the next video. As always, if you have any questions, the best place to put them in is in the Discord server, in the mod help channel. There will be a link in the description. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.